Hello, everyone. It's Martin back after a brief little holiday. Back here today to do our podcast in relation to CA. We will be looking at over step 7 today, but I'm not alone. I've been joined today by Paul. Paul, would you like to the ever-present Paul? I would like to say. So,
Oh, I'm
Paul, would you
really
like to
pleased to be
introduce
here.
yourself?
Well, I'm glad you're here, Martin. Thank you for your service, and I'm glad you're here too, Loz. Yeah, glad to be here, glad to be clean.
Yes, thank you for that. And like Paul's just mentioned, we've been joined by a fantastic VIP today, who goes by the name of Loz. Hi, Loz, would you like to introduce yourself?
My name's Loz. I'm a recovered addict, alcoholic.
Wonderful, wonderful. So there's 3 of us here today, and like we say, we're going to be looking over step 7, which is on the screen at the moment, which is entitled "Humbly Asked Him to Remove Our Shortcomings." But before that, we're just going to have a brief look over our personal histories type of thing in terms of CA. So first to you, Loz, I suppose. What's your journey been like? You're in recovery and in CA.
Yeah, thanks, Martin. Well, my journey's been, my history is relapse. And I guess, just a brief overview of, what it was like, how I got it and how I maintain it today was when I first came into recovery in 2007, I didn't have any concept of a 12-step program, let alone what was wrong with me or threefold illness, etc. What happened was I went for a treatment centre and I completed, and then I immersed myself to the best of my ability in recovery in the rooms. But I fell short, and I was of the type who was constitutionally incapable of being honest with myself. And as a result, everything that I created in my first recovery, and I got up to 8.5 years, I then smashed down because I believed the lie that I could drink and use like a gentleman. And I went out for 3.5 years. My pride kept me out for 3.5 years, and I managed to get back. And obviously, this time, I've had to learn a valid lesson. I lost my wife, the house, the business, and nearly my life as well as others. And that's not my experience today. My experience today is that, this recovery, I've had to really come back and pray for the willingness to be honest, which is the first principle, which goes with the first step. And I've had to really, wrap myself around people who are working the program and studying this beautiful big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And since I've immersed myself within the book and the other literature that comes with it, my spirituality and my emotional sobriety has grown immensely internally. I'm able to be honest, I'm able to put boundaries in place, and as a result, I continually practice these principles in all my affairs. And I guess, I remain teachable and I continue to study.
Yeah. What a fantastic introduction that is. Very very honest, wonderful, Loz. Paul, over to you. How are you doing today? How are we going through CA yourself? What's the journey for you up to now?
It's been really good. I think it's the power of the fellowship, Martin, knowing that there's people who I share this journey with who have been where I am. The circumstances might have been slightly different. The substance might have been different, but the realities of being locked in a cycle of addiction where we can't see a way out. We can't imagine a future using, and we can't imagine a future clean, are realities that most of us share. So the common bond, the reason why it's called Anonymous, in my opinion, is that we come here as persons that used to use and had life-destroying addictions. Today we don't. The rest are details.
Yes.
Doesn't matter how old or young, rich or poor, where I live, what colour I am. None of these things matter. The principle of anonymity is that we used to use. Today we don't use. We found a way out. Let's talk about it. The therapeutic value of one addict helping another can't be measured. And I think today the realities around step 1, if I take a honest look at step 1, at the powerlessness and the consequences, fellas, of active addiction, and I honestly, really look at the causes and conditions around addiction, and the realities, then I won't want to use again. That's my truth.
Yeah.
You know, and you and I, Martin, we've made podcasts. There's podcasts on each of the steps now. This one's on step 7. So if anyone's new, welcome to the podcast. We're really pleased you're here. You know, I'm not a spokesman for CA. I'm just sharing my opinion as one member. And things are pretty good today, Martin. Things are pretty good. I've no complaints. I'm really pleased to be here.
Well, yeah, exactly. That's exactly how I feel, to be quite honest with you. I mean, you've mentioned a few things there that are that I can state have occurred within my life in terms of CA and the benefits. I mean, going from step 1, where I had absolutely no solution. All my answers were just making me return back to the use of cocaine and its devastation on me and my family and my children and my wife, and the potential to lose them was becoming more and more reality day by day. So this progress that I've taken, and this process from step 1 up to step 12, and obviously we're looking at step 7 individually today, they've all progressively impacted me in a positive way to get me back to a life of, you know, normality, as it were. And I will be eternally and forever grateful. Each step's played its way, but the fact, when I look back to my first arising here, my first dealings with CA and the meetings, whether they be online or face to face, they've brought an awareness to me now, and a way in which I can deal with this illness with the help and support of other people around me, and as a higher power, or as a God that I understand him, which I never ever thought that I would be when I first arrived, but I can certainly state by 100% honesty that I feel just blessed and thankful that I'm in this place. Spending the amount of money that I was spending and mental health deterioration is just no comparison to where I am now. So I am forever grateful. Yeah, I mean, we're looking at steps. So today, like we said, we're looking at step 7, which, you know, is humbly asking him to remove our shortcomings, which is kind of in relation to step 6 as well, where we're entirely, step 6 being we're entirely ready to have God remove all our defects of character. So then naturally, as these steps do, beautifully written, we move on to the next step, which is this one, step 7, humbly asked him to remove our shortcomings. Loz, to come to you firstly, what does step 7 mean to you? What's your interpretation and your actions in relation to step 7?
I mean, thanks, Martin. That's a really good question. In terms of what does it mean to me, it means that, you know, I have an opportunity to look at my defects of character. You know, Bill was very clever. You know, he used different words. You know, like defects, shortcomings. You know, mean the same thing. For me, it means that I need to continually work on my defects of character and my shortcomings. You know, I need to continually look at that stuff, because when I'm acting out in my shortcomings, I'm blocked from the sunlight of the spirit. I become resentful. I go backwards through the process. I become discombobulated, I guess. You know, and the more I practice surrendering and hitting my knees and asking for direction and God's will, you know, and understand my understanding of God and the higher power, the spiritual life and emotional sobriety, the more I grow looking at, you know, my shortcomings, and then obviously looking at my assets, which is the opposite to my shortcomings, and the more that I surrender within, you know, for me, the step 7 prayer, reading Drop the Rock, you know, helping others, etc., the better I am able to surrender and deal with life on life's terms, I guess. You know, I mean, that's the nuts and bolts, but I'm sure more will be revealed as we go through.
Wonderful. Yeah, I would add here to everything you've just said there. To be quite honest with you, I've followed a similar path as well. Paul, yourself, how do you see step 7 then, and you know, what does it mean to you?
Well, to answer your first question, how do I see step 7? I see it as the progression of having prayerfully and thoughtfully worked the first 6 steps with someone who has experience in sobriety and recovery and the literature, the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, and the 12 steps and 12 traditions. So someone who's knowledgeable, armed with the facts about addiction and recovery, and has been able to guide me through the process, whereby somehow I've found some power and some wisdom to stay free, and experience what we call a psychic change, a change of perceptions, a change of outlook. Somehow, Martin, I've received the strength to not feel a need to consume mood and mind altering substances, and to stay free from active addiction.
Yeah.
And the idea is, this is the house cleaning we talk about. And, you know, it's a stock taking process, really. Many of the steps are honest. The first of the stock taking is step 1, where I take a real look at unmanageability, consequences, and powerlessness. A real good look. And then I come to step 4, where I take a real look at resentments, fears, and harms that I've done. All of them. Any resentments I've ever had, any fears I've ever had, any harms, not just in connection with addiction, but ever. And then in 5, I do another inventory, the exact nature of my wrongs, largely based on those last columns of the 3 sheets in step 4, the resentment sheet, fear sheet, harm sheet. Yeah. Then from that, I come up with my list of defects of character in step 6. And then I also make a list of my assets of character, my character assets.
Yeah.
And then I come to step 7, which is the first step of the second half of the steps. And I think it's very important to state that. You know, you complete the first half of the 12 steps, you start in step 7. And I see it as a new beginning, where all that stuff, all them consequences, all that powerlessness, all that unmanageability, all those resentments, all those fears, all that harmfulness and harms, all the exact nature of wrongs, all character defects, suddenly it becomes that I've come short. There's a shortcoming of my expectations, of God's expectations, of man's expectations. I've come short, and my own expectations. And suddenly, Martin, through actually going through this process with others, I'm now in a position to ask God, humbly ask him to remove our shortcomings. Now, the practical application is, as was just very astutely shared, that we practice the assets. Yeah, we actively practice the assets. And through prayer and doing the next right thing, we do not practice the defects of character. And as we put our best foot forward, even when it hurts, we keep putting our best foot forward. It gets incrementally a little bit better. That's what I believe every time. And our worst foot gets a little bit better, Martin. So I see it very much in the process of a relationship with God, and very much, you know, a real sort of step along the bridge to normal living that we experience in Recovery and Cocaine Anonymous.
Yeah, and also, Paul, I totally agree. And you know what came out of you know my process of step 4 and step 5 is, you know, I was able to see my behaviours. I was able to see how I behaved in terms of my causes and conditions, how I held on to that as a life skill to survive. But also, what liberated me was to be able to see those defects, and then I get an opportunity to kind of, like, you know, so I've got that awareness in step 6, and then, you know, step 7, I'm starting to surrender and turn to God, you know. And also, you know, I'm utilizing, you know, like you said, the steps that I've done prior, and continuing to work that. And, you know, when I'm maladjusted, you know, and I'm blocked, as I said, from Sunlight Spirit earlier, you know, I have a solution where I can go back and take column imagery, and I can look at myself, and I can free myself, and then I can turn my will and my life over. And then obviously, you know, I'm not insane, and I'm not reacting, and I'm able to recognize that stuff and move forward, and then obviously go on with the rest of the process. It's crucial. I mean, Joe and Charlie share about it, that, you know, these steps are so at one with each other, I guess, you know, they're entangled into each other. You know, if I'm maladjusted, you know, I need to step back, pray, turn to someone else, you know, look at self, take some inventory, you know, rekindle that relationship with the creator, you know, which I choose to call God, a higher power, spiritual program, etc. And the more I continue to practice and do this stuff, the more liberated and rocketed into the fourth dimension I become. And this is, you know, this is like I said, you know, the studying and the continually, you know, continually studying and reaching out and supporting others and helping others. And the more I do that, you know, the better I'm able to survive in this, you know, in this world.
100%, 100%. I think here to that, certainly, Loz, and Paul, yeah, took a lot from that. I think on a personal basis, like personally shortcomings, character defects, able to, you know, when I was ready to have God remove them character defects and the shortcomings, I think it had brought it to my awareness in step 7, in step 6, but now in step 7, I will know I was prayerless for a long period of my mind, for my life. So I regularly know, which I could never have seen in the past, but I regularly pray now just to keep, and for me, it's just keeping that balance. I was very much, some of my defects and shortcomings would include being unwise in decisions that I would make, and not establishing boundaries, and allowing my ego to feel that all the right decisions, all my decisions were the right decisions, type of thing, and not being able to liberate myself to and have the belief that other people will be able to assist me, and being quite harsh with words. But now my conscience, when I'm thinking in that mentality, or when I'm acting in that mentality, my conscience is now provoked as soon as I'm thinking or acting in that way, and I now try to examine it by praying, which just allows me, my mindset, and for God to assist me in this, in that conundrum that I'm in that time. Whereas in the past, I would have been hot-tempered, I would have been extremely unwise, and I would have potentially abused again. So this just gives me that boundary before I take that step, and removing these shortcomings and having more of an awareness of these shortcomings is just a massive step, step 7, but a massive step in the right direction for me personally, without a shadow of a doubt. But as both of you have said, is a progression from step 1 to step 7, and is something, I think, like Loz identified earlier, is something that I personally need to keep reminding myself of, or there's a very much a danger of me taking a step backwards and increasing the risk of relapse, which is certainly not where I want to go. So it's ensuring that I look over this step as well as all the other steps. Is there anything else you'd like to add on this step, Loz?
Yeah, I mean, I guess, you know, in the big book on page 76, it gives us a prayer to read, and you know what I do, and I continue to do, is I break it down, and if I may be as bold as to just quickly read it out and then maybe describe as I go through what I try and do.
Yeah, of course.
Is, you know, and so it's a step 7 prayer, and it goes, my creator, I'm now willing that you shall have all of me good. And what I do is I list off all my assets, all the good traits, through learning about my negative side, which is my defects. And then it goes on to say, so I'm now willing that you shall have all of me good and bad. So I say the good stuff, the assets, you know, how God would want me to behave and be portrayed in life, etc. And then I look at the bad ones, and I read off my defects of character, my shortcomings. I pray that you now remove from me every single defect of character which stands in the way of my usefulness to you and my fellows. So I'm asking him to please take away all my negativity in terms of my defects. Please take away. Show me my assets. Show me your will. My creator, you're now governing my actions. You know, and I practice, you know, to you and my fellows, let me be useful to you. Grant me strength as I go out from here to do your bidding. Amen. You know, and I'm able to do that through the day as well. And, you know, if, like I said, if I'm maladjusted, You know, it's generally, you know, I'm getting maladjusted to people, places, and things and situations. And if I'm not addressing that and turning to God, you know, praying and turning that over and doing the step 7 prayer as well as the step 6 prayer, you know, I'm probably going to fall short, and I'm going to get maladjusted in the spiritual malady, and I'm going to become unmanageable. I'm not going to be able to deal with life on life's terms. And as I said, you know, I'll go backwards, you know, and like we've all agreed that, you know, that isn't an option today. And this is the beauty about 24 hours. You know, today I have 24 hours to get through. And as a result of that, you know, and a result of continuing to practice this stuff, you know, I have a life beyond my wildest dreams, you know. And when I say a life beyond my wildest dreams, I mean, you know, internally, you know, I have an awareness and I have a surrender going on. And I have a beautiful process within the 12 steps, which I continue to work on a daily basis. And I give back freely, you know.
Superb.
And that's it, really. You know, I don't know whether Paul wants to add anything, but yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, carry on, Rob. Carry on.
No, I was just going to say, you know, I really understand why it says in the 12 and 12 today that it separates the men from the boys, you know, because it's continual work. You know, I have to really practice this stuff on a daily basis. And you know, the reasons for that we've just described. And I'm really grateful that I have an outlook with a loving God in my life today. And as a result of that, like I said, you know, I have a life beyond my wildest dreams. And, you know, just to reiterate, you know, if anyone's listening and struggling, you know, it is difficult, but it is possible to recover one day at a time.
Yeah. Certainly.
Yeah. So I mean, you know, it's such a wonderful process, and so much substantial stuff just been shared. I think, you know, it's important to point out that, you know, what I am today is not what I was. Do you know what I mean? The transformations took time and rugged determination. It hasn't always been easy, and it hasn't always been perfect. You know, the thing is about spiritual principles, I aspire to spiritual principles. I don't claim to have perfectly got everything worked out, but I stay clean, I help folk, and I'm harmless, and I'm not collecting up laws, a new resentment list or a new step 8 list. On the contrary, you know, and jumping ahead a little bit, in a little while we'll be doing a podcast on step 10 personal inventory, and I'd just like to share in general terms about recovery for a minute or two. You know, the important thing is that instead of looking for the next one, who's got, will I have enough for it? Will it last? Will it be real? Will I get captured? What about my job? I'm late for work. I'm not going into work. My relationship, not paying the bills. You know, instead of that, today I'm more concerned about folks that I'm reaching out to. And that's a complete transformation. You know, and that's where it's at, really. So, you know, I mean, it talks about ego deflation a lot. Ego deflation, from one perspective, the steps are about becoming right sized and becoming emotionally sober and emotionally available, right? Instead of behind a locked door and closed curtains, sneaking around, absolute insane behavior, we're generally more available and more right sized. And the ego that gets deflated through all this process. Do you know what I mean? And a degree of humility comes in, and meekness. And that's where I see it. You know, and in step 10, we talk about we continue to take personal inventory. When we were wrong, we promptly admitted it. So, you know, what is personal inventory? Well, it means that I continue to personally be responsible for my behaviors, words, and thoughts. It means that I continue to watch out for anything that might go on a step 8 list. So I make sure I'm not upsetting anyone else, that I'm not at some point going to have to make amends to them. I make sure that I'm not getting resentful. And if I do feel resentful, I try to take action around it, rather than just say, oh, well, I deserve to feel that, or they shouldn't have said this, you should have said that. I try to take action around it.
Yeah.
If I'm becoming fearful, as all human beings do, I try to address that. You know, by grace, I can't remember the last time I actually harmed anybody. But if I was to, then personal inventory involves keeping an eye on all that kind of thing. You know, so in practical terms, Martin, at the end of the night, I will ask myself, did I harm anyone today? Was I in the solution today? Did I upset anybody? Did I help people today? Was I prayerful, thoughtful, and kind today?
Yeah.
Is there anything I could have done better today? And it's not with a morbid reflection. It's with a view to being glad and thankful that today I'm helpful, kind, and considerate, or more so than what I used to be. Instead of being self-centered, more God-centered, and more others-centered. So I think it's really important to understand the value of the process is you get self-awareness, as has already been shared, and you're able to know that you're in the process of change. It might not always feel great, you know, and God gives us grace to go through things. We don't go around things anymore. We go through things, you know, and we can have the victory and have a degree of peace and serenity in the midst of trials and concerns and regrets of the past, fear of the future, anxiety in the present. You know, so it's a wonderful, wonderful process, Martin.
Yeah, I would agree with that. What for me personally, 100%, especially the bit that you spoke about in relation to ego deflation. I think some of the times my character defects and my ego would be that high that I would try to justify some of my behaviours and my actions, but using I think a lot of humility comes into this step, and we can examine a little bit more the our behaviors, our actions, and our words. And like you just stated there, Paul, at the end of the day, we can, you know, examine type of thing. Well, was everything we've done right? And then, you know, years ago, there's absolutely no way that I would have been contemplating, well, actually, maybe that wasn't done in the correct way. And maybe now there's something I can do about it to try and make that better. I wouldn't have done that in the past, but gradually through the steps, and including this one, obviously, I'm aware now of the my shortcomings, and I can deal with it either at the time before something's happening, or even after something's happening a lot quicker than I did before, which just ensures that my mental, emotional, and spiritual balance are very much in tune and are balanced. Because I find that if they're not in balance for me personally, I'm much more inclined to, you know, to use again and escape that situation and escape it by using a drug of my choice, which is just detrimental, massively detrimental to me and those around me. So just deflating that ego, as you stated, having that awareness is just a massive help and assistance to me, my life on a day-to-day, you know, week by week basis, and as long as I keep following that, it's a winning formula. As Loz was stating there, it's something he has his way to put this into action, as everybody else does, and it's just finding what works individually for you and keeps yourself clean and serene. But I think fantastic session. I think
can I just add?
Of course. Sorry, Paul. Yeah.
I think the idea is change. You know, in step 6, we became ready to have these defects of character removed. In 7, we asked for the shortcomings to be removed. So it's the desire for change, you know, the desire for right change. You know, change is the only constant in life. The question is, am I changing for the better? So it's a desire for change, personal change, real change, lasting change. And that's where it's at. You know what I mean? And for some of us that come into these rooms of recovery, it's really dramatic. You know, I mean, some people were up to all kinds of things. You know, it was very much the exception if they spoke a word of truth. Most of what was said was lies, and so that's a huge transformation. For other people that come in, you know what I mean, they may have just been weekend users. They might not have been up to all kinds of things. So the change is different that's needed for each individual. But either way around, it's a psychic change, a spiritual solution to a chemical problem.
Yeah.
And just to add to that, you know, I totally
Sorry,
reiterate.
when we get in this process, we become self-aware when we put pen to paper with someone that's armed with the facts that we call a sponsor, and we're willing to change then, and we see the possibility. And the power of the fellowship, Martin, is that when we come to meetings online or face to face, we see this stuff is real. You know, it goes from the realm of possibility to reality. You know what I mean? When you have flesh and blood folks in front of you that have got free and stayed free and are happier, they ain't perfect. Life ain't perfect, but they're clean and sober and they're more productive members of society. You realize it's achievable. It's like you hear the word of faith. You know what I mean? The report of faith in the rooms that you can do this.
Yeah.
So it's just a wonderful, wonderful thing, really.
And just to add to that, guys, you know, for me, you know, I totally agree. You know, we all come from different walks of life. We behave in different ways. You know, some of us go to prison, some of us don't. And you know, for me, what was always suggested to me, you know, obviously, you know, where I'm taking my nightly inventory, you know, sometimes I miss stuff because it's light inventory. You know, so it has always been suggested or directed to me that once a week I review my week with column inventory because, you know, I miss stuff, you know, and what column inventory for me does is it shines a light on my defects and shortcomings, and like I said at the beginning, or more or less at the beginning of this podcast, is it will then unblock me from the spirit, you know, and I can move on with my higher power, and you know, and I try and do that, you know, I really try and do that, you know, and I'm not perfect, and I'm not ashamed, and I don't govern, but I try and practice these principles in all my affairs because it's given me a life beyond my wildest dreams. And I guess, you know, step 7 is something that you can really talk about and really get into and go on and on and on because it's a daily continual thing. You know, and if I stop doing that, I go insane. And and you know, my illness becomes alive. The fear is right on me, and if I don't manage to pull that back and do some stuff, i.e. the 12 steps, and you know, get back on the program and plug into the 3 sides of the triangle, you know, I'm going back out, and you know, and you know, it's a killer illness, and you know, I might be lucky to get back. If not, you know, I might not, and then all bets are off.
No, what? Yeah, exactly. I think this session today has been one of the finest, to be quite honest. I think it's been extremely informative, which I've sincerely loved. And I think all of us, in particular yourselves, Paul and Loz, have been extremely honest, open and willing, which always adds to, you know, a more in-depth podcast, which in my opinion this has been absolutely tremendous. This now brings us to the end of our podcast. I would like to add, if you are listening, if you would please like and potentially subscribe. That would be fantastic. But and at the same time, if you could, you know, share this with somebody else who you think that might benefit from it, you might end up, you could potentially change somebody's life. So just consider that. I think Paul's going to take us through some of the there's many meetings that people can attend. Paul?
Yeah, here I am. Yeah, good stuff. Yeah, it's been really good. Thanks for being here. Yeah, so I'm just going to swap the screens about now, or try to whilst I'm talking. It's been really good, I have to say.
Yeah,
I think what I would like to say is, if you're struggling with drugs and addiction and you found yourself on YouTube or elsewhere listening to this, you can get clean and stay clean. You can have a happier future. You really can. You know, it's quite possible to do it. It's not always going to be easy. We can do it, but it's the power of the fellowship. It's the power of the society. It's the power of having folks that you can phone up when you're thinking to use and drink and get some help. What's on offer is a completely changed life.
Yeah,
I'll second that.
yeah.
It's completely priceless. Now I'm just trying to I'm talking whilst I'm getting the meetings list up to put up on screen. If you can just bear with me.
No, of course. I think what you just said there, Paul, as well. I think, but all three of us, as Loz just agreed with you, I think we can all adhere to that. The fact that we wouldn't necessarily have deemed this as assisting in our lives the way that it has done, but for many people who are just, who are listening in to these podcasts, they're potentially at a position that we were when we first arrived. And the fact that we are still here now within this program and trying to support other people, it's just well, from a personal level, I'm sure I speak on behalf of you two as well, it's mesmerizing in the sense that the effect that it's had on our lives, physically feeling a lot better, emotionally more in tune with our emotions, which we've discussed in step 6 and step 7. It were with the conscience that we can now think and be more honest and open. And I think it changes your life in terms of the addiction, but I think it also changes your life in terms of our day-to-day living. And I think we gain more, it becomes self-fulfilling, and we gain more self-respect from that, which is just a fantastic thing. And it might be, some people might be listening and think, well, that's all right for you to say, Martin, it's working for you. But I think one of the statements goes, it can work if you work it, or it can work if you walk it. And if you just attend some of the meetings that Paul's going to discuss with you shortly, get in touch, just listen to different people's experiences, that is the first step for you to do. And it's have a go, just have a try. You're here listening to this so far. Nothing ventured, nothing gained. Paul, over to you.
Absolutely. So there's lots and lots of meetings. There's hundreds of CA meetings every single week, face-to-face and online. If you're in the UK and you're looking for a face-to-face meeting, if you wish to go to cocaineanonymous.org.uk, the address at the top there, and bear in mind, you can pause and rewind this video if you want to read the readings on the screen at any time. If you wish to go to cocaineanonymous.org.uk, you get lists of local meetings in Britain. There's meetings of CA all over the world. If you wish to go to caonline.org, you get a list of online meetings. You'd also get a list of online meetings at ca.org, or a link on there where you could get to them. Now, there's lots and lots of online meetings. Now, Zoom meetings are great. If you're new or you've never been to a Zoom meeting, you don't need to put your camera on to attend a Zoom meeting. In fact, only about a quarter of attendees do put the camera on. Most people don't. So don't ever feel you can't come to a Zoom meeting because you don't put the camera on. Nor do you even need to put your audio on. You don't even need to say hello if you don't want to. If you just want to come and listen, you're welcome at all these meetings. Most of us do say hello, but most people don't put the camera on. It's entirely optional. So we're part of a group called We Can Recover, and that group meets twice a day, every day at 2 p.m. and 8 p.m. UK times. So that's 2 and 8 every day. And that's the boxes that are circled with purple. For example, underneath that at the top left is Pop-Up Recovery. That's on every morning at 10:30. At the top right is Reaching Out One-to-One. That's on every single night at 11. Underneath that is Daily Reprieve on Zoom. That's every single day at 9:30. It's a really good meeting. So my suggestion would be come along to some meetings and listen to the experiences of people that have found freedom from active addiction.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Martin.
No problem.
Yeah, thanks, Martin. Thanks for asking me. And yeah, this stuff works.
It certainly does. So from ourselves, from Loz, from Paul, myself here at the podcast, we'll hopefully see you again, everybody in step 8. So until then, we will love you and leave you, and look after yourselves. Okay. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.